We're going to shift gears, okay, because right now we've got one topic, but three speakers. Okay, I've never done it this way before, okay? One topic, three speakers. So first up will be Jasmine. I'll introduce Jasmine. After that will be Bert. After Bert will be Fran. So they're all covering different areas, okay? And should be very interesting, very entertaining. So let me introduce Jasmine very quickly. Jasmine is a freelance director and executive producer. I didn't know you can be a freelance executive producer. I think that would be a great job. Okay, as a director and executive producer, she has clocked over 100 hours of content for international and local broadcasters, including Discovery Channel, Nat Geo, History Channel, CNN, Lonely Planet Television, many others. As a television commercial director, as if that wasn't enough already, she has also done spots for Pepsi, Sony and Nokia, and if that's not enough, she also does socially engaged film projects to raise awareness and help fundraise for non-profit. So not just about the money, okay? And in that vein, and that's why she's here today, she's representing the working group for the proposed Film and Television Guild for Singapore, the first time it's ever been done like that. Okay, that aims to raise professional standards and welfare of film and television industry professionals and promote understanding of policy and industry trends. Please welcome Jasmine Ng.
Hi everybody, thanks for spending this afternoon with us. It's actually quite exciting to see all the diagrams that Alvin showed, all the do's and don'ts. I think being in the film and TV industry, we are in the business of creating amazing point of view, amazing perspectives, jaw-dropping visuals. And a lot of that requires us to do pretty hazardous and dangerous things. But you know, truth be told, I think it makes me wonder, going through all the diagrams, going through the slides that Alvin presented, how much of us are trained and know what we do. I mean, we're trained for our specific roles, you know, in directing and editing and as a cameraman, but how much of safety and protection is not really one of the most sexiest topics. And sometimes we must acknowledge in this room, we've been in situations where we sort of, you know, what is your risk assessment? I want to get that shot, right? If you push yourself a little further and say, oh, come on, it will look so cool if we did this. And then it's down to the discretion and the judgment of individuals to say, okay, come on, that's not worth it. It's TV, guys, it's not life and death, right? But as far as I know, as the regulations have it, we're not required to have a health and safety officer on set. And as most of us in this room know, when you're in film and TV, as soon as you even say, let's do this job, you're already over budget and out of time, right? So, I see that kind of laughter. And you've been on sets where sometimes you see a lot of amazing professionals and you see the way, just even the way they lay cables, you feel like giving them a medal because it's so beautifully done. You look at it and you go like, wow, sweet, you know, it looks great. On the other hand, I'm sure we've also been on sets where you look at things happening and you're doing something, you hear somebody go, whoa. Okay, we've heard that too. Or you look at somebody doing something, mounting something, and you go like, is this a good idea? And you start to roll your eyes. It should not be that way, right? It should not be that way. I mean, looking at our feature films, looking at television, whether it's the television programs or commercials, we know that we're capable of very high production standard. And so it must be that those kind of standards should carry over to all aspects of professionalism, including safety and health. But what do I know about safety and health? What do I know? I'm coming to you guys today from a point of view as a practitioner, and also as Ian was starting to introduce, a group of us have come together with the encouragement of MDA and NTUC, and also working with WD and some of the agencies to bring together awareness for film and television professionals, whether you are a freelancer or employee or own a production company or are a student hoping to enter into the industry. So I'll talk a bit more about that. But first, you know, this is one of the many things that as soon as you said, okay, we should have an association, we should have a guild, it usually, when you say you should have something, it's usually driven because of something happened. Oh dear, that's why we should fix this. And here's a scenario that most of us might be quite familiar, well, somewhat familiar with. Okay, you are art debt. It's usually your art debt when usually the production budget is a bit small. So art debt tends to encompass a lot, right? When I showed the slides to Ian, he was saying, oh, this is a very imaginative scenario. And I said, no, this is actually based on an actual case. Somebody came to me, and you know this person was worried, right? So this person was asked to you are art debt. You're hired for a television dramedy series, and as scripted, you're asked to set a wooden wardrobe of clothes on fire, and you're asked to drown somebody in a water tank, okay? So what do? Okay? And this particular person is fresh to the industry and trying to get their foot in, right? And has no experience of dealing with either. What would you do? What could you do? You could Google for DIY site for pyromaniacs. They like to set things on fire. They may have very different ways you want, what color of fire, what quality of fire, what flammables. You could go to YouTube. There's a video for everything right now. I'm sure there's a video to tell you how do you do a scene of things spontaneously combusting on $0. What you really should do is search for safety guidelines if the budget does not allow you to hire a professional. So let's try Googling. So safety regulations, Singapore TV crew. This is what came out. It's pertinent to cabin crew for SIA, pertinent to Scoot. Let's try another one. Health, so the industry term should be health and safety, right? So let's try Health Safety Television Singapore. We're good at making videos for other people for health and safety issues, but we're not very good. I mean, as the search engine, has listed out the earlier rankings, the first few ones that come up are pertinent to other industries, videos that we make for other people to be concerned about health and safety, but not so much pertinent to our industry. So let's try just health and safety television. And this is what you get, the top rankings already for the more mature industries. I mean, for a developed country, we should think that we should be somewhat on par with the kind of level of standards and professionalism. And easily for UK, for Canada, for Australia, they're these are not just suggestions or recommendations, these are legislation in place as well. I mean, just for Open Flames alone, this is from a site that's from a Canadian labor site, and they're very specific about, your special effects coordinator, your stunt coordinator, if it's a torch, it's a candle, if it's a fireplace, what must happen, to what temperature, all that kind of thing. And more importantly, this line, all cast, crew, including stunt performers, should be notified in advance of their involvement in open flames and briefed on any action and safety issues prior to shoot day. You should know what kind of precautions to take. Now, thinking back to our person who's hired to be art dep, doesn't know any of this. The cast so far doesn't know any of this. The crew so far doesn't know if anything goes wrong, what will happen with any of that, right? So coming back to this, what is available to us? And as you can see, I think WDA is making a lot of efforts to that turn right now. And a lot of the courses that they've got set up are addressing this. Now, I have to say, some of us in this room are of a certain vintage. We may not have gone to film school, may not have gone to Neon, when it was first set up. When it was first set up, we're really, way past that. And, it makes me wonder, how are we training ourselves? Neither do we have an apprenticeship system. So who do you train on? Who do you learn good practices from? How do you enforce them, right? But we certainly know that our industry has been growing, and we're proud of that. After all, you see with MDA's, various reports, the 2012-2013 annual report, we're talking about the increase, we're talking about, how we're contributing to the GDP, how we're raising value per practitioner. And certainly from another website, through WDA, and they cited some of the statistics from an SMF site, which is actually MDA related. And it says that more than 66,000 are employed in the media sector, okay? More specific, this is actually taken from an MOU that was signed between Ngee Ann Polytechnic, WDA, and SMA. And so maybe this is more specific to why we're here, film and television. So they're gathering this kind of numbers. So as you can see, the numbers are we're not quite sure where the numbers are coming from. And now if you look at any television program or feature film, if you look down the list of credits, right, when the credits start to roll, you know that easily you recognize your friends' names, that easily you kind of can figure out more than possibly even 2/3 of the people on that credit list are freelancers. So how is that captured in statistics? if you don't declare taxes, if you don't, contribute CPF, how are you captured? How are we captured? When they do these surveys, every time they do in Parliament, they say, the film industry is growing by this much, that many more people, this many more schools having courses. How much of that is accurate? So I'm curious about that. But what we know across all these different statistics is definitely it's a growing industry and it will keep growing, and we are adding to, the wider creative industries sector. And as I was saying, it's great to see that from Elvin's presentation and also from a quick survey of courses which are available through WDA and the WSQ ones. So they have specific sort of learning outcomes. Ensure safety standards are maintained, procedures are followed on a film set in accordance to workplace and safety requirements. Who should attend? Actually, I think everybody should attend. Anyone who has business stepping on a set should attend. How do we make sure people are learning this? How do we make sure that they have time out of a really busy pre-production schedule? We're already in pre-production for like 3 projects. You're going to shoot the next day. How do you make time for things like this? How do we make sure people know and learn and are equipped to do dangerous things? And WDA seems to see even wider than that. I was curious to see that even for the diploma in film and television script, there is even a unit that asks you to identify and learn competencies and about workplace safety. That's great. So how do we make sure we actually do this? How do we make sure people actually take on these classes? So it comes back to this idea of, now there's more availability of courses, of information, but how do we make people realize the importance of all this? Now, as I said, taking a survey of the countries like Australia, closer to home is Australia, further afield, UK, the States, Canada. These are countries with legislation in place. These are countries with unions in place. It took them a while, injuries, forced compensations, court cases, to bring them to a situation where they then enacted legislation. It probably took some lobbying as well. Nobody ever wants to make time to do the unsexy things of checking that their ladder is that kind of ladder or you have that kind of harness. But it is important. Like I said, just taking a look at some of the safety guidelines for the film and television industry in Ontario. Just look at all the guidelines here, and you click into everyone, and it opens up to more instructions. How many of us have taken time to take a look at these basic guidelines? What's pertinent in Canada? How you can hurt somebody in Canada is surely the same way how somebody can be hurt in Singapore, right? Look, much as we want to say we can do the sexy things like, we can do 3D stereoscopic, we can do this and that. Oh, we've got 4K cameras. You can say all these things, but at the end of the day, what is just as important is, great, you've got the camera, you bought the camera, you can use it, you can do these really snazzy looking commercials. But if somebody gets injured, if you get hurt, if it's a case of fatality, then what's the point of that? All the investment that we've done, say through initiatives like MDA, giving grants, giving training grants, giving investment grants in production, what does it all lead up to? If people get hurt, people get burnt out, people get scared, people drop out of the industry, what is the end effect of that kind of investment? So I think we need to realize that, this was taken from the Creative Skill Sets website from the UK, that, health and safety skills, these need to be learned and understood and practiced across different roles, right? And it should be an asset. So it should be something that should be front up in your CV. Now, of course, in the film and TV industry, we love to say everything is in your show reel, right? But along with that, I think if you say, okay, look, I've done this kind of shoot where it involved these kind of elements, the pyrotechnics or the whatever, and we know the safety requirements, that means you can save the production money because you know what you're doing. You're going to do things in an efficient and timely way. You're going to ensure the safety of people. You're going to not create damage to property. That should make you an asset. That should not make you somebody who asks too many questions. It should not be perceived that way, right? It should not be perceived as, oh my God, that person who always say, but it's not safe. Actually, we shouldn't do this. It should not be that way. It should be, we should not do this, therefore we'll do it this way, right? Okay, I don't have diagrams and no transitions and all animation, but I do have a sing-along. Okay, so do you guys know the theme from Ghostbusters? Am I going to be forced to sing? So if it's something strange in your neighborhood, who are you going to call? Ghostbusters, right? If there's something weird and it don't look good, who are you going to call? Ghostbusters. I think we should adopt a new theme and sort of adapt from that. How many of you would be able to do the theme for film and TV crew? You know? How many of you would immediately know who to call if you had a scene like our art dep person, who to call on, to hire, and if not to hire, then how do you know what kind of materials should use, what kind of safety precautions should be at hand, how do you inform your crew and your actors so they know beforehand what's going to happen? Because really, never mind that you signed that contract to be on that shoot, if it's something dangerous that you're required to do, you should have the right to say no, unless you know those safety precautions are there. So really, who are you going to call? Who do you know to call? We know we can check out the WDA website. We know we can attend one of the courses. But I think the more immediate thing is that all these things should really be at the back of our heads, at the tip of our tongue, so easily. We should know this in the back of our hands, really. But I'm not sure if this is information that many of us do know, much as we can say, we've got 20 years of experience in the film and television industry in Singapore. So I think a lot of good intent is out there. Yes, there's legislation in place. Yes, there are guidelines. Yes, there are courses. But if people don't know about it, if people don't avail themselves to those kind of resources, it's not going to be very useful. So what does it take, right, for all of us to put this into practice? I mean, the most common kind of response and reactions to this when you say, health and safety regulations, a lot of people will just say, okay, first, we don't have enough money. We don't even have enough crew members. We don't have somebody who can take care of this, right? It's too expensive. Local budgets can't afford it. That would be usually, that kind of response. Certainly, the few times when I see, in fact, the first few times I worked with international co-production company from UK and Australia on working on productions, like directing for Discovery Channel. And I was handed this, swath of documents to go through, and it was a health and safety guidelines, right? And I have to say, my first reaction was like, oh my God, so leceh, But when you think very carefully about the places you're going to shoot at, it is important to declare all these things, because then it makes you rethink your production and plan ahead of what do you need to do. Not so much to make it onerous on the production, but then you just got to think a little smarter on how do you make sure then the filming is possible and will be successful. And here's the thing to it. I mean, when you say, too tedious, waste time, but remember, wasting your precious half an hour to think a little harder on it could save a life of someone, right? If it's too expensive and all that, if you think that, then really the better question we need to ask ourselves is, do we really think our lives are so cheap that we can just it's worth risking just so that you can have a little bit of savings? So the more important thing is, while we have great looking show reels with great looking, films to show off, we need to learn to be also as proud of other aspects in our practice. So here's the thing. I mean, we need to think through these, the steps you take. I think if there are better guidelines, we have the guidelines and legislation in place, right? But that should lead to, instead of people thinking, it's harder to do productions, it should be instead, there are more specialists being trained. We can, in that case, do more interesting and more challenging scenes. I mean, after all, think about it this way. With countries with legislation and unions, has it stopped them from making amazing movies? No, right? So here's the thing, let's be better trained so we can make more challenging, more interesting scenes. We can delight more audiences. We can also possibly get better ratings, right? Let's promote and train specialists so that we're not wandering amongst ourselves, and let's not make the same mistakes. No point reinventing the wheel over and over again, right? If there are specialists out there, let's avail ourselves to it. Maybe then rates can then be evened out because there's more work, And when specialists are hired from abroad, let's make a better job of learning from them and adopting those kind of practices, good practices, right? And really, and this comes from why we want to do the kind of advocacy and awareness raising. as the working group of the Film and Television Guild. It's like crew should be hired for your experience and for your value add. It shouldn't be that just because you're more experienced and likely to raise, if you have concerns, that should not make you a liability. That should not make people think that, then I'll maybe not hire this person, right? And I think that's what, to be able to have a sustainable future for film and television industry, that's what we must have. Okay, so maybe very quickly, I'll just jump ahead and I'll come back to that. Look, I mean, the thing is that now many of us work, it used to be several, maybe a decade or two ago, a lot of people would have come from the state television broadcaster, right, from TCS, MediaCorp. But now there are a lot of freelancers. But if you look away from Singapore towards the other countries, the state broadcaster would have to carry a lot of responsibilities because you hire that many more people. So BBC, if you go up to their website, they've got tons of forms and guidelines and regulations and reminding you which kind of health and safety act in the legislation and what are the subclauses that you should be mindful of. It's always asking for the safety and attention to be put across all roles, right? And I think that is what brings you longevity, right? Is that level of attentiveness, that level of, then you can do more ambitious things as well. I think the larger question also that we need to ask ourselves is, yes, we have health and safety protection, and we also have, as Alvin was going through with us, the Workplace Safety and Health Act that was enacted in 2006, that was passed in Parliament. And as he went through his slides, it was very clear, it's like, yes, everybody has to be responsible, whether you're the occupier, and towards the very end, self-employed. And that's what's from the Ministry of Manpower website. It says if you're self-employed, if you're a freelancer, you are liable. You are also responsible. But when it comes to the other clauses, when it comes down to things like the workplace injury compensation, are freelancers to be covered if something happens to you on the job? Q&A. Question mark. The insurance people do question mark. Alvin will answer this during the Q&A, right? Okay. So I think I'll kind of just really just end there, I think that health and safety protection is for all of us. Your protection status should not be validated or invalidated upon whether you are a freelancer, whether you're a full-time employee or not. Just to say, I mean, this is information available to us about the legislation, right? But again, I think the finer detail of how does it pertain to film and TV, that's something that we have to work on. And I'll come back here. So hopefully that's something that we can help towards with the Film and Television Guild. So we're in the process of registration. And right now, when we first started, we put up a Facebook group. But before we got to decide what our name should be, too many people joined, so now we can't change our Facebook group name. So we're stuck with SG Media Pro. Please sign on so that you can get updates. And there's many good things that we've got installed, planned with NTUC, WDA, IPA. So please keep in touch with us via that. Okay, thanks. And I'll pass it on to...
Thanks so much, Jasmine.